The morning in Glendale was peaceful, with clear blue skies and a calm atmosphere that set the perfect tone for the day. The local coffee shop was alive with customers enjoying their morning drinks, the sound of soft chatter mixing with the clink of cups. Among them sat Michael, a blind man, at a quiet table, savoring his coffee in silence. His loyal German shepherd, Zeus, stood by his side, unwavering and alert. The dog wasn't just a guide. He was Michael's protector, a former K-9 unit with years of training in high-pressure situations. As Michael sipped his drink, Zeus's posture remained firm, his eyes scanning the surroundings with a quiet vigilance. There was a special bond between them, one that didn't need words. Zeus had always been more than a companion. He was Michael's strength, his partner in every sense. Michael could feel the peace in the air, but he knew Zeus would always be ready, his instincts never resting. The world around them moved at a different pace, but with Zeus by his side, Michael had a calm certainty that everything would be okay. The peaceful atmosphere is suddenly shattered by the loud roar of motorcycles. 3 bikes rev their engines as they pull into the café's parking lot, drawing the attention of everyone around. The bikers, led by Chuck, dismount with casual confidence, their loud laughter filling the air as they take in the scene. There's a sense of dominance in the way they carry themselves, a subtle but unmistakable edge that begins to change the mood. Chuck's eyes land on Zeus, and there's a moment of hesitation. He stares at the German shepherd with a mix of curiosity and challenge. The bikers walk closer, and Chuck, eager to assert his presence, begins making jokes about the dog. He comments on Zeus's size and intelligence, his tone mocking, but with a bite. The teasing is uncomfortable, and despite the laughter, there's a tension growing in the air, almost palpable to anyone paying attention. Zeus, however, remains calm. His posture is firm, his gaze locked on Chuck. The dog's instincts are on full alert, scanning the biker's every move, but he stays still, waiting, reading the situation. It's clear that Zeus is prepared for anything, yet his calm presence sends a silent message. He is in control. Michael, still unaware of the growing tension, sits at his table, sipping his coffee. But as the bikers continue their teasing, he begins to notice the subtle changes in Zeus's behavior. His dog's stance has shifted. There's a subtle tension in the air that Michael can feel, though he can't see it. His unease starts to grow, his instincts picking up on something that's off. Zeus is more than just a guide dog. He's a protector, and something in the air tells Michael that Zeus is ready to defend him if necessary. Chuck's teasing takes a more provocative turn as he leans in, his grin wide, reaching out toward Zeus's face. The German shepherd stays perfectly still, his eyes locked onto Chuck, his body tense with silent warning. As Chuck's hand comes closer, Zeus lets out a low, menacing growl that cuts through the air. The sound is enough to make the bikers pause, but Chuck, undeterred, just laughs it off. "Relax, big guy," Chuck says, his voice mocking as he withdraws his hand for a moment, clearly trying to assert his dominance over the animal. The tension in the air thickens as Chuck, fueled by his own pride, decides to push further. He taunts the dog with exaggerated gestures, waving his hands around as though trying to provoke a reaction. Michael, still unaware of the growing threat, tries to defuse the situation. He places a hand on Zeus's neck, his voice gentle as he murmurs, "It's okay, buddy." But the calmness in Michael's voice stands in stark contrast to the rising tension around them. Chuck continues his taunts, egged on by his friends and the crowd of onlookers. The bikers laugh, but their laughter feels hollow now, a nervous edge creeping into their voices. The situation begins to escalate as Chuck, embarrassed by the dog's growl, steps forward again, clearly testing the limits of his own ego. His hand reaches out for Zeus's face once more, but the dog is ready. He remains motionless, his low growl growing louder, a warning to anyone who knows how to listen. Michael feels it then, something is wrong. The air is charged, thick with the tension of a situation spiraling out of control. The crowd around them starts to murmur in discomfort, their eyes darting nervously between Chuck and Zeus. The playful atmosphere from earlier has completely vanished. Zeus's stance remains unyielding, his body poised to act if necessary, a protector waiting for the right moment. Michael's heart begins to race as he realizes that his dog, his loyal companion, is in full protective mode, and this is no longer just about playful teasing. Something far more serious is unfolding. Chuck, his pride wounded by Zeus's earlier growls, feels his challenge now turning into something more personal. In an impulsive move, he kicks a nearby chair toward Zeus, sending it crashing to the ground with a loud, jarring noise. The clatter echoes across the café, and in an instant, Zeus's instincts are triggered. His posture shifts, completely defensive now, his body coiled and ready to act. The crowd reacts with a mix of shock and unease, sensing the danger escalating. Chuck, ignoring the growing discomfort around him, steps even closer, a mocking grin still on his face as he taunts Zeus. "Come on, big guy, what's wrong? Scared?" His voice is filled with arrogance, yet there's a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes, a growing realization that his actions might be pushing things too far. The tension is now unbearable. The crowd murmurs, their discomfort evident, but Chuck remains fixated on Zeus. His behavior is becoming more erratic, like a man determined to prove something he can't back down from. That's when a woman, who's been quietly watching from a nearby table, stands up. "Hey, stop it," she demands, her voice cutting through the air. "Leave the dog alone." Chuck hesitates for a brief moment, caught off guard by her sudden confrontation. He looks around, the disapproving stares of the onlookers beginning to settle on him. For a second, he's rattled, his bravado falters. But instead of backing down, he's fueled by an inner need to assert himself. He lets out a short, dismissive laugh and steps forward, ignoring the woman's plea. In a final, reckless act, Chuck steps right up to Michael's table, pushing past the edge of reason. Without warning, he reaches out to push Michael, trying to intimidate him directly. But Zeus isn't having any of it. In the blink of an eye, the dog reacts, positioning himself between Michael and Chuck, his body rigid, his teeth slightly bared. The message is clear: back off, now. Zeus's defensive posture is a warning shot, and anyone watching can see it. The crowd falls into a heavy silence, the tension in the air thick enough to cut with a knife. Chuck freezes, taken aback by the dog's swift response. The situation has escalated beyond words. Zeus isn't just a guide dog anymore, he's the guardian he's been trained to be. Chuck stands motionless for a moment, realizing the gravity of what he's done. The crowd's eyes are now all on him, waiting for his next move. But he knows deep down that if he crosses that line, he's in serious trouble. He's lost control. The only question now is, will he back down, or will the situation spiral even further? Chuck stands frozen, his bravado starting to fade as the crowd's discomfort becomes impossible to ignore. The silent weight of disapproval from the onlookers bears down on him. His friends, once laughing along, now seem uneasy, exchanging glances with one another, the tension palpable in the air. One of them finally speaks up, urging Chuck to back off. "Man, just forget it. It's not worth it," he says, his voice low, trying to salvage whatever dignity they have left. Chuck's face flushes with embarrassment, the adrenaline of the moment draining from him, replaced by the reality that he's lost control. The crowd, now visibly uncomfortable, watches him as if waiting for him to make his next move. Realizing he's pushed too far, Chuck steps back, his shoulders slumping in defeat. His earlier cocky demeanor crumbles. Without another word, he turns on his heel, followed by his friends, who quickly scatter, their laughter replaced by silence. Chuck exits the scene, his pride shattered. The crowd releases a collective breath, the oppressive tension finally lifting from the air. The change in the atmosphere is immediate. The uneasy silence that hung over the café dissipates, and people begin to relax. The murmurs around the area die down, and some patrons return to their conversations. But Michael doesn't immediately feel the calm. His senses are still alert, a feeling of wariness not quite leaving him. He tightens his grip on Zeus's leash, who remains vigilant by his side, still aware of every movement around them. Zeus, though protective, seems to relax slightly, sensing that the immediate threat has passed. His muscles, once tense with readiness, begin to loosen. Michael takes a slow breath, though a sense of unease still lingers within him. He stands up, deciding it's time to leave the café, but the peaceful walk home doesn't come easily. Zeus walks alongside him, but there's something off about his movements today. His gait is slightly restless, his eyes scanning the street more than usual, a reminder that the dog's instincts don't just disappear with the confrontation. Michael feels the same unease stirring within him, a quiet whisper telling him that the danger may not have fully passed. Something about Chuck's actions felt unfinished, like the threat hadn't been fully dealt with. The idea that Chuck could come back or that something else might be brewing hangs in the back of Michael's mind as they leave the café, the world around them still calm. But Michael knows better than to ignore his instincts. And with Zeus by his side, he's always alert, always ready. But now, he can't shake the feeling that the day's tension may only be the beginning of something much larger. That evening, as Michael and Zeus settle in at home, an unsettling feeling begins to creep back in. The calm of the apartment is broken only by the soft sounds of the city outside, but something feels different tonight. Zeus, who had seemed relaxed earlier, is now tense, his ears perked, eyes scanning the room as though he senses something that Michael can't hear. A distant rumble of motorcycles cuts through the quiet night, growing louder and closer with each passing second. The sound fills the air, stirring something in both Michael and Zeus. Michael's stomach tightens, an instinctive fear rising in him. The rumble of engines stops, replaced by a sharp, deliberate knock on the door. Michael freezes, his heart pounding in his chest. The tension from earlier in the day floods back, and he knows deep down that this isn't just a random visitor. Cautiously, he doesn't open the door, his hand gripping Zeus's leash as the dog growls low, sensing the threat. Michael's unease deepens as the voice calls out from the other side. "Relax, man, it's just me, Chuck." Michael's heart sinks. He hadn't expected Chuck to come back, but now that he has, there's no mistaking the malicious intent in his voice. It's a threat disguised as casual conversation, and Michael knows exactly what this means. Zeus's growl becomes louder, his body tense, positioning himself firmly between Michael and the door, ready to protect him at all costs. Michael's mind races, he's trapped, the door a flimsy barrier between them and whatever Chuck intends to do next. He refuses to open it, his voice steady as he says, "What do you want, Chuck?" Outside, the situation escalates quickly. The sound of footsteps circles the perimeter of the apartment, slow and deliberate, like a predator stalking its prey. The noise outside grows more menacing, and then something scrapes against the window, sharp, grating, like fingernails dragging across glass. The sound sends chills down Michael's spine. Zeus responds instantly, his growl deepening, fiercer now, as his stance becomes even more protective. Michael, feeling trapped and scared, reaches for his phone. His hands are trembling as he dials 911. He speaks quickly, trying to keep his voice steady. "There's someone outside my apartment. I think they mean trouble. Please hurry." The operator assures him that help is on the way, but it's hard for Michael to shake the fear that has settled deep in his chest. The footsteps outside suddenly stop, and the silence that follows feels deafening. Michael knows the sirens are close. They're the only hope in this growing nightmare. But he's painfully aware that Chuck's presence isn't gone for good. This isn't over. Soon, the sound of sirens pierces the tension, and the footsteps outside finally stop. Michael breathes a sigh of relief, but the danger still feels real. When the officers arrive, Michael opens the door cautiously, letting them inside. He recounts everything. Chuck's earlier behavior, the confrontation, the unnerving knock at the door, and the sound of the scraping against the window. He warns the officers that Chuck might return. The officers nod, taking notes, but their reassurances don't ease the fear gnawing at Michael's mind. We'll increase patrols in the area, but if you feel unsafe, don't hesitate to leave for the night, one of them says, his voice calm but concerned. Michael nods, though he knows deep down that leaving isn't an option. This is his home. And no matter what Chuck plans next, Michael won't run. Not with Zeus by his side. But as the officers leave, and the apartment door closes behind them, Michael can't shake the feeling that Chuck's aggression is far from over. This uneasy peace is just the calm before the storm. As the night falls, a heavy silence settles over Michael's apartment, but the tension remains thick in the air. Michael and Zeus sit in the dimly lit living room, both alert, eyes scanning the shadows. The sounds of the outside world fade, but neither of them relaxes. Michael knows that Chuck won't give up so easily. The threat still lingers, like a storm waiting to break. He can feel it in the pit of his stomach, a constant, nagging reminder that danger isn't truly gone. Zeus, though quieter now, remains on edge. His body is tense, his eyes flickering toward the door at every sound, every movement. Despite his role as a guide dog, Michael knows that Zeus's past as a former K-9 unit is never far behind. His protective instincts are sharp, his loyalty unwavering. The dog's vigilance speaks volumes. It's not just about guiding Michael through the world anymore. Zeus is his guardian, his protector, and that bond has never been more evident than it is right now. As Michael reflects on everything that's happened, a sense of gratitude washes over him. The day's events have tested them both in ways he hadn't anticipated, but in the quiet of the apartment, Michael realizes something profound. No matter what happens next, Zeus will always be there to watch over him, to protect him, no matter the cost. The bond between them, forged through the fires of shared fear and trust, is unshakable. Michael leans back in his chair, reaching down to gently pet Zeus's fur. Whatever comes next, we face it together, he whispers softly, his voice filled with determination. Zeus's ears flick at the sound of his voice, a small but meaningful wag of his tail brushing against the floor. Michael smiles slightly, comforted by the dog's presence. He doesn't know what the future holds, but he knows one thing for sure. As long as Zeus is by his side, he's never truly alone. The camera lingers on the two of them, the city outside quiet, the flicker of streetlights casting long shadows through the windows. The peaceful, unspoken promise between them fills the room as the episode closes on their unwavering bond, ready to face whatever challenges might come their way. If you enjoyed this heartfelt story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more amazing tales. Your support keeps us going,